Sir, please do not let them close it yet. The coffin is too light. The tiny voice did not come from the lawyers, the family members, or the people who had spent the last hour explaining why everything was already decided. It came from Lily Carter, a 7-year-old girl standing quietly near the back of St. Michael's Chapel, holding the sleeve of her mother's old cardigan with one hand and pointing toward the polished wooden coffin with the other. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. The candles flickered beside the altar. The guests in expensive black suits turned toward the little girl as if they had forgotten she was even there. Adrian Valenti, the powerful head of the Valenti family, looked down at Lily with a cold expression that had frightened boardrooms and business rivals for years. But the girl did not look afraid. She looked worried. "What did you say?" Adrian asked. Lily swallowed and glanced at the coffin again. "I said it feels wrong, sir. It feels too light." A quiet wave moved through the chapel. Some guests exchanged uncomfortable looks. Others smiled gently, as if they believed a child had simply misunderstood something she could not possibly understand. Lily was the daughter of Emma Carter, a housekeeper who had worked for the Valenti family for almost a decade. She was not a guest of honor. She was not someone anyone expected to speak during a private family wake. She was supposed to stay near the entrance, keep quiet, and let important people handle important matters. But Lily had always noticed things adults ignored. She noticed when a clock stopped making noise before anyone else realized it was broken. She noticed when a family photograph was placed slightly differently on a shelf. She remembered tiny details because, in her world, small details mattered. Adrian looked around the room. His cousin Victor Valenti stood near the lawyers, calm and respectful, wearing the same serious expression he had worn all morning. Victor had been the one organizing the arrangements. He had been the one explaining the paperwork, the timing, and the family responsibilities that needed to be handled quickly. "Lily," Emma whispered softly, embarrassed, "that is not something you say at a funeral." The little girl lowered her eyes. "I am sorry, Mommy. I just thought someone should know." Those words made Adrian pause. She was not trying to create a scene. She was not trying to get attention. She was simply sharing what she had noticed. For the first time that morning, Adrian looked away from the coffin and started watching the people around it. He noticed how quickly some relatives wanted the ceremony finished. He noticed how often Victor checked the documents in his folder. He noticed that the lawyer seemed more focused on the next step after the funeral than the person everyone claimed to be mourning. Adrian had spent his entire life learning how people use power. He knew when someone wanted control. But he had never expected the first person to challenge the story in front of him would be a child standing in a borrowed dress beside the chapel wall. "Why do you think it feels too light?" Adrian asked. Lily slowly stepped closer, but she did not touch the coffin again. "Because when my mom helps move boxes, I know the difference between empty and full," she said. "And everyone keeps acting like nobody should notice." The room became silent again. Victor gave a polite smile. "Adrian, she is just a child. This has been a difficult day for everyone." It sounded reasonable. It sounded kind. But Adrian noticed something strange. Victor did not ask Lily what she saw. He only wanted the question to disappear. Adrian closed the folder in his hand and looked at the coffin one more time. A funeral was supposed to be about remembering the truth of someone's life. But suddenly, Adrian wondered if everyone in that room had been asked to accept a story before they ever had the chance to ask questions. And the smallest person in the chapel had just asked the one question nobody else wanted to hear. Why was the coffin so light? The chapel did not become silent because people believed Lily Carter. It became silent because everyone realized she had said something nobody wanted to answer. For years, Adrian Valenti had built his reputation by reading people before they spoke. He could tell when a business partner was hiding information, when an employee was nervous, and when someone entered a room with an agenda. But now, standing inside St. Michael's Chapel, he faced a situation that made no sense. The person who noticed the first problem was the one person everyone expected to ignore. Lily stood beside her mother, Emma, keeping her hands folded in front of her. She looked smaller than everyone else in the room, surrounded by expensive suits, family lawyers, and people who had spent their lives around power. Yet she was the only one who had interrupted the carefully arranged ceremony. "Mr. Valenti," one of the family attorneys said gently, "perhaps we should continue. Emotions are high today, and children sometimes misunderstand serious situations." The words sounded polite. They sounded protective. But Adrian noticed the way the lawyer avoided looking at Lily. He noticed the way Victor Valenti quickly agreed. "Exactly. She is just confused," Victor said. "We should not allow a child's imagination to disturb the family during this difficult moment." Lily lowered her head when she heard that. Not because she was ashamed of what she said, but because she realized nobody wanted to hear the reason behind it. Adrian watched her carefully. "Lily," he said, "tell me exactly what you noticed." Emma looked worried. "Adrian, I apologize. She should not have interrupted." "I did not ask for an apology," Adrian replied. "I asked for an answer." The room changed. It was only one sentence, but everyone understood what it meant. Adrian was no longer asking as a family member. He was asking as someone searching for facts. Lily looked toward the coffin and then back at Adrian. "Before today, I helped my mom carry boxes in the storage room," she explained. "Sometimes they were empty, sometimes they had books, dishes, or blankets inside. I learned that empty things feel different." A few guests exchanged small smiles, believing the explanation was too simple to matter. But Adrian did not smile. "And what else?" he asked. Lily hesitated. "The people here kept saying everything was already decided. They kept talking about papers. They kept saying the family had to finish everything today." Adrian glanced toward the folder in Victor's hand. Victor immediately closed it. It was a small movement, almost invisible. But Adrian saw it. The same way he noticed a missing signature on a contract or a change in someone's tone during a negotiation. "Why are the documents so important today?" Adrian asked. Victor remained calm. "Because responsibilities must be handled properly. You know how these matters work." Adrian did know. That was exactly why something bothered him. Grief usually slowed people down. It made them remember. It made them pause. But today, certain people seemed desperate to move forward. The ceremony, the paperwork, the family decisions. Everything had a schedule. Everything had a deadline. Except the truth. Adrian walked closer to the table where the documents had been placed. He did not open them. He simply looked. The papers were arranged perfectly. Too perfectly. Like a plan prepared long before anyone expected questions. Behind him, Lily quietly whispered to her mother, "I did not want to make trouble." Emma squeezed her hand. "I know, sweetheart." Adrian heard those words. For some reason, they stayed with him. Lily was not trying to expose anyone. She was not trying to enter a world she did not belong to. She only believed that if something felt wrong, someone should say it. Adrian had spent years surrounded by people who knew exactly what to say to protect themselves. But this little girl had done something rare. She had spoken before knowing whether anyone powerful would listen. Adrian finally turned back toward Victor. "The ceremony will continue," he said. Everyone relaxed for a moment. Then Adrian added, "But the paperwork waits." The room froze. Victor's expression changed for less than a second. It was barely noticeable. But Adrian saw it. And for the first time that day, he wondered if Lily had not interrupted a funeral. Maybe she had interrupted a plan. The question was no longer whether the coffin felt too light. The question was why someone needed everyone to believe otherwise so quickly. Adrian Valenti had spent most of his life learning one important rule. The truth was rarely hidden in the loudest voice in the room. It was usually hidden in the smallest detail everyone else ignored. After leaving St. Michael's Chapel, he did not return to the family mansion immediately. Instead, he stayed in his car for several minutes, looking at the notes from the funeral arrangements, the documents Victor had prepared, and the single sentence spoken by a 7-year-old girl who had no reason to understand family politics. The coffin was only the beginning. Adrian knew that. A strange feeling was not enough to accuse anyone. A child's observation was not enough to overturn a family decision. He needed facts. So he started with the first detail that did not fit. The funeral schedule. The document said everything had been arranged quickly because the family wanted privacy. That explanation sounded reasonable. But when Adrian checked the timeline, he noticed something unusual. Several approvals had been completed before the family meeting had even happened. Someone had prepared the next steps before anyone had officially discussed them. At the mansion, Victor remained calm. He welcomed Adrian back with the same respectful attitude he had shown all morning. "I hope you understand today was difficult for everyone," Victor said. "We simply tried to make things easier during a painful time." Adrian watched him carefully. "Easier for who?" he asked. Victor paused. Only for a moment. But Adrian noticed. "For the family," Victor replied. "For everyone who needs stability." The answer sounded perfect. Almost too perfect. Meanwhile, Lily sat quietly in the kitchen with her mother. She was not interested in the conversations happening in the rooms above her. She was not trying to discover secrets. She only wanted to know if she had done something wrong. Emma looked at her daughter and smiled gently. "You know you cannot always fix things adults ignore." Lily looked down at the small bracelet around her wrist. It was an old bracelet made from simple blue thread. "I was not trying to fix it," Lily said. "I just did not want everyone to believe something that was not true." That sentence reached Adrian when he passed the kitchen doorway. He stopped for a moment. He realized something important. Lily was not investigating. She was not playing detective. She was simply refusing to pretend. Later that afternoon, Adrian asked the family attorney for the original funeral documents. Not copies. Not summaries. The original files. The attorney looked uncomfortable. "Those records were prepared through the proper channels." "That was not my question," Adrian replied. The attorney slowly handed over the folder. Inside, Adrian found the first real inconsistency. The death certificate was complete. The arrangements were complete. The legal process was already moving forward. But one small piece was missing. The hospital record referenced in the paperwork was not attached. It was only mentioned. Adrian looked at the empty space where the document should have been. It reminded him of Lily's words. Something missing. Something everyone had accepted because nobody expected to question it. When Adrian asked where the hospital record was, Victor appeared almost immediately. "There is no need to overcomplicate this," Victor said. "The family has already suffered enough." Adrian closed the folder slowly. "Interesting," he said. "I asked about a document. You answered about pain." Victor's expression remained polite, but his confidence had changed. Just slightly. Adrian noticed another thing. The people who were innocent wanted answers. The people who were hiding something wanted the questions to stop. Before the day ended, Adrian returned to the chapel alone. He stood near the place where Lily had touched the coffin. For years, he had believed power meant having the ability to control every situation. But now, he wondered if real power was recognizing when someone without any influence had seen something important. A child had not given him proof. She had given him a direction. And for the first time since the funeral began, Adrian asked the question that could change everything. If the story everyone accepted was carefully prepared, who was the story protecting? Adrian Valenti did not announce an investigation. He did not call a meeting. He did not accuse anyone. Instead, he did something far more difficult. He waited. For a man who controlled companies, negotiations, and entire rooms with a single sentence, patience was not his natural instinct. But this time, he understood that moving too quickly would only help the person who had prepared the story. So Adrian changed his approach. He decided to test the people around him without revealing what he knew. The first test was simple. He informed the family that the inheritance process would be delayed for 48 hours until all records connected to the funeral were reviewed. He gave no explanation. He blamed it on a routine legal check. Everyone accepted the statement with polite expressions. Everyone except Victor. 48 hours? Victor repeated. That seems unnecessary. Adrian looked up from the document in front of him. A delay of 2 days should not concern anyone who has nothing to hide. Victor smiled calmly. Of course not. I only want to avoid more stress for the family. Again, the words sounded reasonable. Again, Adrian noticed what was missing. Victor never asked what was discovered. He never asked why the review was necessary. He only cared about the delay. Later that afternoon, Adrian asked his private assistant to quietly review the movement of documents connected to the estate. He did not ask for opinions. He asked for timestamps, facts, records. The first unusual detail appeared within hours. A draft of the inheritance agreement had been created earlier than expected. Much earlier. It was dated before the family had officially received confirmation of the death. Adrian stared at the screen in silence. The document was not proof of everything, but it was proof that someone had been preparing for a future that had not officially arrived yet. Meanwhile, Lily was sitting outside in the garden with a small notebook in her hands. It was not a detective notebook. It was simply where she drew pictures and wrote down things she wanted to remember. Adrian noticed the notebook when he walked by. What do you write in there? He asked. Lily looked surprised. Things I do not want to forget. Adrian nodded. Like what? Lily opened the page carefully. There were drawings of simple things around the mansion. A broken flower pot. A blue door. An old clock on a hallway table. Small details that most people would never notice. Then Adrian saw something else. A drawing of the funeral room. The coffin. The table. The people standing around it. And next to the coffin, Lily had drawn a small empty space. What is that? Adrian asked. Lily looked at the drawing. That is where the missing thing should be. Adrian remained quiet. What missing thing? Lily pointed at the drawing of the family members' belongings. At the house, when someone leaves, people keep things that belong to them. But at the funeral, I did not see the watch. Adrian remembered the old photograph from the family hallway. The person in the picture always wore a specific watch. It was a family item everyone recognized. But nobody had mentioned it that day. Another small detail. Another unanswered question. Adrian did not tell Lily she was right. He did not want to make her feel responsible for solving something created by adults. Instead, he asked one careful question. Did anyone tell you about the watch? Lily shook her head. No. I just remembered. That answer stayed with Adrian. She was not collecting secrets. She was remembering reality. That evening, Adrian requested access to the personal inventory from the estate records. The document listed valuable items, family belongings, and personal effects. But when he reached the section for the missing watch, there was nothing. No record. No explanation. No mention. At that exact moment, Victor entered the office. "Adrian, I hope this review is not becoming unnecessary suspicion." Adrian closed the file. "I am not suspicious of questions, Victor." He looked directly at him. "I am suspicious of people who become uncomfortable when questions are asked." Victor remained silent for a moment. Then he smiled again. "Be careful. Grief can make people see patterns that are not there." Adrian looked toward the window, remembering Lily's words. The smallest details. The things adults ignored. He knew one thing now. The missing watch was not the answer. It was a doorway. And behind the doorway was a truth someone had worked very hard to keep out of sight. Adrian Valenti had spent years building a reputation around one idea: facts mattered more than appearances. In business, a polished presentation could hide a weak foundation. In families, a perfect smile could hide a difficult truth. And now, inside his own home, he was beginning to understand that the most carefully prepared story could still have missing pieces. The missing watch was not just an object. It was a question nobody wanted to answer. Adrian decided to follow that question. The next morning, he requested a complete inventory of the personal belongings connected to the funeral arrangements. Not the summary. Not the version prepared for the family meeting. The original record. When the file arrived, Adrian noticed something immediately. The list was detailed. Clothing. Personal items. Family documents. Small possessions that carried emotional meaning. Everything had been recorded except one thing. The watch. The same watch that appeared in family photographs for more than 20 years. The same watch that relatives always recognized as part of the Valenti family history. Adrian placed the document on the desk and stared at the empty space where that item should have been listed. It was not enough to prove a plan. It was only another unanswered question. But unanswered questions had a way of becoming important when too many appeared together. Later that day, Adrian met with the independent attorney he trusted most. He asked for a review of the hospital references connected to the official records. The attorney carefully examined the documents and noticed something unusual. The hospital record was mentioned several times, but the actual supporting page was missing from the file. "That could be a simple mistake," the attorney explained. "Paperwork is not always perfect." Adrian nodded. "One mistake is normal. Several connected mistakes become a pattern." At the same time, Lily was helping her mother organize a small room near the kitchen. She was not aware of the investigation happening around her. She was not searching for clues. She was simply putting things back where they belonged. When Adrian passed by, he saw the same blue thread bracelet around her wrist. "You always wear that?" he asked. Lily looked at it and smiled slightly. "My grandmother made it for me. She said blue reminds people to look at the sky when they feel lost." Adrian noticed something attached to the bracelet. A tiny metal charm shaped like a clock. "Where did you get that?" he asked. Lily touched the charm carefully. "It was inside a box my mom kept from the old house. She said it belonged with important memories." Adrian did not react immediately. He remembered the family photographs again. He remembered the missing watch. He remembered how Lily noticed objects that carried meaning. Small things that told bigger stories. "Did you know the family had an old watch collection?" Adrian asked. Lily shook her head. "No. I only know people keep things when they matter." That simple answer stayed with him. Later that evening, Adrian reviewed the family records again. This time, he looked beyond money and ownership. He looked for personal history. He found something unexpected. The missing watch had not been listed as an asset. It had been categorized years earlier as a personal family item with sentimental value. That meant someone had not forgotten it. Someone had chosen not to include it. Adrian leaned back in his chair. The pattern was becoming clearer. The missing hospital record. The rushed inheritance documents. The absent watch. Each detail alone could be explained. Together, they created a story that was harder to ignore. Then Victor entered the office carrying a calm expression and a folder. "Adrian, I heard you are reviewing old family items now." Adrian looked at him. "Is there a reason I should not?" Victor smiled politely. "No reason at all. I only worry that searching for hidden meanings can create unnecessary confusion." Adrian closed the file slowly. "Interesting. I have not told anyone what I was looking for." For the first time, Victor's confidence weakened. Only for a second. But Adrian saw it. The question was no longer whether something was missing. The question was who knew it was missing before anyone else did. Adrian Valenti had learned something important during his years of leadership. A secret rarely stayed hidden because someone was perfect at protecting it. A secret survived because everyone around it accepted small pieces of the story without asking why they fit together. And now, inside his own family, Adrian was beginning to see those small pieces forming a picture he could no longer ignore. The missing watch had led him to the missing hospital record. The missing hospital record had led him back to the inheritance documents. Each discovery pointed in the same direction. Someone had not simply prepared for a loss. Someone had prepared for what would happen after that loss. Adrian requested one more review from his attorney, this time focusing on the timeline of every document connected to the estate. The results arrived that evening. The attorney placed the files on Adrian's desk and spoke carefully. "There is something unusual here. Several documents were created before the official confirmation was entered into the system." Adrian looked down at the pages. "Meaning?" "Meaning someone was preparing for the legal consequences before the event was officially recorded." Adrian remained silent. The room felt colder, not because of the temperature, but because of what the information suggested. This was no longer about a missing item. It was about preparation. Someone had built a path forward before anyone else knew there was a reason to walk down that path. Across the mansion, Victor Valenti continued acting like the calmest person in the building. He attended meetings. He answered questions politely. He offered support to relatives who were struggling with emotions. To anyone watching from the outside, Victor looked like the person holding the family together. But Adrian had started noticing something different. Victor never asked what Adrian discovered. He only asked how long the review would take. That detail bothered Adrian more than anger would have. Anger was emotional. Fear was obvious. But controlled urgency was something else entirely. Meanwhile, Lily sat at the kitchen table drawing in her notebook. Adrian found her carefully sketching the old hallway where the family photographs were displayed. "What are you drawing today?" he asked. Lily looked up. "The things people forget." Adrian smiled slightly. "What do you mean?" She pointed to the page. "Sometimes adults look at big things and forget small things." She showed him the drawing. There was the old clock on the wall, the wooden table beneath it, the family picture above it, and a small empty space where the watch had once been visible in the photograph. Adrian studied the drawing. "You remember that?" Lily nodded. "Because everyone else looked at the picture, but nobody looked at what was missing." Those words stayed with him. The same idea had appeared again and again. The missing watch. The missing hospital record. The missing explanation. Adrian had spent years dealing with people who tried to hide information through complicated strategies. But Lily reminded him that sometimes the strongest evidence was not what existed. It was what should have existed but did not. Later that night, Adrian asked the estate office for access records. He wanted to know who had viewed the documents before the funeral. The answer surprised him. Victor was not the only person involved. Several internal staff members had accessed the files days earlier. The family lawyer, the estate manager, the person responsible for organizing the funeral arrangements. A network of small actions had created one large outcome. Adrian looked through the records again and noticed one name appearing more often than expected. Victor had not created every document himself, but he had been the person connecting everyone together. Adrian closed the file and leaned back in his chair. For the first time, he allowed himself to consider the possibility that the person everyone trusted most had been carefully controlling the story from the beginning. The next morning, Adrian made a decision. He would stop asking questions publicly. He would start collecting answers quietly. He would not confront Victor until he knew exactly how the plan worked. Before leaving his office, Adrian looked at Lily's drawing sitting on his desk. A child had not uncovered the truth because she had power. She had uncovered the first crack because she paid attention. And now Adrian knew the crack was opening into something much bigger than a suspicious funeral. It was a hidden battle over truth, family, and control. The only question left was how deep the plan went, and who else had agreed to protect it. Adrian Valenti had spent his entire life understanding one simple truth about power. The person who controls information often controls the outcome. But now, he was learning something even more important. Sometimes the person with the least power was the only one who could see what everyone else ignored. After discovering the pattern behind the missing documents, Adrian stopped acting like a grieving family member and started acting like someone searching for the truth. He did not announce his suspicions. He did not warn Victor. He simply watched. The first thing Adrian changed was access to the estate records. He quietly requested a complete activity report showing who opened, edited, or reviewed important files during the days before the funeral. The report looked ordinary at first. Names, times, standard procedures. But Adrian knew ordinary details could reveal extraordinary problems. One name appeared repeatedly. Victor Valenti. Not always as the person making changes. Not always as the person requesting information. But always somewhere near the decisions. Victor had not built the entire structure alone. He had guided the people around it. Adrian then asked his assistant to review security footage from the family office hallway. Not because he expected to find a dramatic moment. He was looking for routine. Routine revealed habits. Habits revealed choices. The footage showed something interesting. Several days before the funeral, Victor entered the office where the estate documents were stored. He stayed only a few minutes. Nothing about the visit looked suspicious. But later that same day, several files were updated. Adrian watched the footage again. Then again. The important detail was not what Victor did. It was what he did not do. He did not appear surprised by the documents. He already knew what was inside. Meanwhile, Lily continued living her normal life inside the mansion. She did not understand the legal conversations happening around her. She did not know Adrian was quietly investigating. She simply noticed that adults were behaving differently. One afternoon, Adrian found her returning a small box to a shelf in the storage room. "What is inside?" he asked. Lily opened it carefully. Inside were old family items. A handwritten card. A faded photograph. A small key. Things that had no obvious value to anyone outside the family. "Why do you keep these things?" Adrian asked. Lily looked confused by the question. "Because people throw away things when they think they are not important." Adrian looked at the old photograph inside the box. It showed the Valenti family years earlier. In the corner of the picture, the same watch appeared on the person everyone believed was gone. But there was something else. On the back of the photograph was a handwritten note. The handwriting matched the same style found on older family records. Adrian carefully turned it over. The note contained only a few words, but they changed the meaning of the picture. It mentioned a private meeting that was never included in the official family timeline. Adrian felt the pieces moving closer together. The watch was not just missing. The photograph suggested someone had removed an item that connected to a forgotten part of the family history. That evening, Adrian met with the independent attorney again. This time, they reviewed the photograph, the estate records, and the access logs together. "This changes the situation," the attorney said. "Why?" Adrian asked. "Because if the missing items were removed intentionally, then someone was not just preparing paperwork. Someone was controlling what information survived." Adrian looked through the documents quietly. For the first time, he understood the full scale of the problem. The goal was not only to create a false story. The goal was to make sure nobody had enough pieces to question it. But there was one person who had collected pieces without even knowing she was collecting evidence. A little girl with a notebook. A little girl who remembered a watch, a picture, and a feeling that something was missing. Adrian finally made his decision. He would bring the truth into the open, but only when he had enough proof that nobody could dismiss it. Victor still believed he was controlling the story. He believed Adrian was only looking for comfort after a painful loss. He did not realize Adrian had stopped searching for answers. He was building a case. And the next discovery would reveal whether the family had hidden a mistake or protected a much bigger secret. Adrian Valenti knew the hardest part of uncovering the truth was not finding the first clue. It was deciding when the truth was strong enough to stand on its own. A single document could be questioned. A missing item could be explained. A child's memory could be dismissed. But a chain of facts was different. A chain could not be ignored. After weeks of quietly reviewing records, Adrian finally had enough pieces to understand the shape of the plan. Someone had created a story around a death, then built a legal structure around that story before anyone had time to ask questions. But Adrian still needed one final connection. He needed to know who benefited the most from keeping the family confused. The answer became clear when his attorney completed the review of the estate records. The inheritance documents were not just prepared early. They were designed to transfer temporary control of important family decisions before the situation could be reviewed independently. The person positioned to manage those decisions was Victor Valenti. Victor had always presented himself as the responsible family member. He spoke calmly. He helped organize everything. He offered solutions before anyone asked for them. But Adrian now understood that sometimes the most dangerous person in a difficult situation was not the person creating chaos. It was the person who looked like they were preventing it. The final piece came from the old photograph Lily had found. Adrian asked the family historian to examine the handwritten note on the back. After comparing it with older family records, they discovered something unexpected. The note was written during a private disagreement years earlier about control of the family estate. It mentioned a promise that had never been included in official records. A promise that certain family decisions should never be controlled by one person alone. Adrian read the note several times. The missing watch, the altered records, the rushed inheritance documents, and now the forgotten family agreement were connected. The goal was not only to hide information. The goal was to remove every obstacle that could challenge one person's control. Meanwhile, Victor noticed that Adrian was no longer asking casual questions. The relationship between them changed. "You seem different lately," Victor said during a quiet conversation in the office. Adrian looked at him. "I started paying attention." Victor smiled slightly. "To what?" Adrian closed the folder in front of him. "To what people say, and what they avoid saying." For the first time, Victor did not have an immediate response. It lasted only a moment, but Adrian noticed. Later that evening, Adrian returned to the kitchen where Lily was drawing in her notebook. He placed a copy of the old photograph on the table. "Do you remember why you noticed the watch?" he asked. Lily looked at the picture carefully. "Because everyone was looking at the person. Nobody was looking at what was missing." Adrian nodded slowly. That was exactly what had happened. Everyone had focused on the official story. Nobody questioned the empty spaces around it. Lily had not solved the mystery. She had simply refused to ignore the details. The next morning, Adrian made his final decision. He would bring everyone together in the same room where the family had first accepted the story without questions. St. Michael's Chapel. The same place where people had been asked to believe. This time, they would be asked to see. Adrian prepared every piece of evidence carefully. The document timeline. The missing hospital record. The estate access logs. The photograph. The family note. The chain was complete. Before leaving, Adrian found Lily near the hallway window. "You know," he said, "many people spend their lives trying to make powerful people listen." Lily looked up. "Did you listen?" Adrian smiled. "Yes, because you were not asking me to believe you. You were asking me to look." That night, Victor received the invitation to return to the chapel. He read the message and remained calm. He still believed he had control. He still believed the story he created was stronger than the questions being asked. But he did not know one important thing. The person who had first noticed the missing piece was no longer standing alone. And this time, the truth would have witnesses. The same chapel where everyone once accepted a carefully prepared story became the place where that story finally began to fall apart. St. Michael's Chapel was quiet that morning. The same wooden seats were arranged in rows. The same stained glass windows reflected soft colors across the floor. But this time, nobody came to mourn. They came to hear the truth. Adrian Valenti stood near the front of the room with a folder in his hand. Around him were the family members, the attorneys, the estate managers, and Victor Valenti. Everyone could feel that something had changed. Victor entered with the same calm expression he had worn throughout the entire situation. He looked confident. He looked prepared. He believed Adrian was about to discuss family concerns, not expose a carefully built plan. "Adrian," Victor said politely, "I hope this is not another delay. The family has already been through enough." Adrian looked at him for a moment. "You are right about one thing, Victor. The family has been through enough. But not because of questions. Because nobody was allowed to ask them." The room became silent. Adrian placed the first document on the table. It was the timeline of the estate records. He explained how important files had been prepared before the official confirmation was completed. Then he placed the hospital record review beside it. He explained that the supporting documentation connected to the official story was incomplete. Not missing because of a simple mistake, but because someone had allowed an incomplete version of events to move forward. Victor remained composed. "That does not prove anything," he said. "It only shows paperwork was imperfect." Adrian nodded. "You are correct. One document is not enough." Then he placed the access records on the table. The record showing who viewed and managed the files before the funeral. The room changed. People looked at each other. The information was no longer a suspicion. It was a pattern. Adrian continued. He explained the inheritance documents created before the family had time to review them. He explained the missing watch. He explained the photograph and the handwritten family note that revealed a forgotten agreement about shared decisions. Each piece connected to the next. Victor finally looked less certain. "You are building a story from small details," he said. Adrian looked toward Lily, who was sitting beside her mother near the back of the room. "No, I am building a truth from details everyone ignored." Lily lowered her eyes, uncomfortable with the attention. She had never wanted to be part of a family conflict. She had never wanted recognition. She only wanted someone to notice what she noticed. Adrian turned back to the room. This child did not investigate your documents. She did not access your records. She did not know the family history. She simply saw something missing and had the courage to say it. Emma held Lily's hand. For the first time, the people in the room were not looking at Lily as the housekeeper's daughter. They were looking at her as the person who started the search for the truth. The final evidence came from the family historian. The old agreement written years earlier confirmed that no single person had the authority to control major family decisions without review. That agreement had disappeared from the recent records. Victor had not created every piece of the plan, but he had benefited from every missing piece. The family attorney quietly explained the next steps. The documents would be reviewed officially. The estate decisions would be paused. The people involved in hiding information would have to answer through proper legal channels. There was no dramatic victory. No shouting. No revenge. Only accountability. Later that evening, Adrian returned to the mansion and found Lily looking at her notebook. "Are you writing down what happened today?" he asked. Lily shook her head. "No, I am writing something else." "What?" Adrian asked. Lily smiled softly. "That people should listen when someone says something feels wrong." Adrian looked at her and understood the lesson he had almost missed. Power had not saved his family. Money had not revealed the truth. A little girl who everyone overlooked had done that by paying attention. From that day forward, Adrian changed more than the family records. He changed the way the Valenti organization listened to people. Employees had clearer ways to report concerns. Family decisions required transparency. People who had once been invisible were finally given a voice. Lily never became powerful because of wealth. She became important because she reminded powerful people of something they had forgotten. The smallest voice in the room can sometimes be the one that protects everyone from believing a lie.